Everyone thinks Pompeii froze a moment in time. The evidence says something far more specific was happening. We've been told Pompeii is a snapshot. August 24th, 79 AD. Vesuvius erupted. The ash fell. People died. Civilization paused. It's the perfect narrative. Clean, tragic, finished. But the bakeries of Pompeii tell a different story, and it's one that rewrites what we think we understand about how ordinary Romans actually lived. Consider the bakery of Modestus, located in region I of the city. Archaeologists found his oven intact, loaves still resting on the stone floor where they'd been left to proof. At first glance, this confirms the snapshot theory. He was working. The mountain killed him. Work stopped. Done. But here's what that narrative misses. Those loaves weren't fresh. Bakers in Pompeii began their work around 2 a.m. before dawn. The city had no large-scale grain storage. Bread had to be baked daily, every single day. The loaves archaeologists found had been sitting for hours. They were already cooling. Some were already sold. This matters because it means the baker wasn't caught mid-shift. He was at a specific point in his routine, not the beginning, not the middle, closer to the end. The work was nearly done. That changes everything about what those final hours actually looked like. The accepted story assumes Pompeii was economically static. Bakers baked, merchants sold, slaves worked. Nothing changed year to year. But the bakeries themselves reveal something else. Multiple ovens, different sizes, different styles, some crude, some sophisticated. This wasn't subsistence production. This was a competitive market. Modestus wasn't just feeding his neighborhood. Loaves have been found with stamps, maker's marks, ownership marks. Some bore the name of a baker, others the name of an owner, which means bakers sometimes didn't own their own bakeries. They worked for someone else. They rented the space. They paid for the grain. They kept what profit remained. This is where the snapshot breaks. A baker working for wages or a percentage. Grain prices fluctuating, competition from other bakeries, customers who might choose a rival shop. This wasn't a timeless routine. This was a daily negotiation with economic reality, stress, calculation, risk. The bakeries also tell us something about Pompeii's population. 38 bakeries have been identified in a city of roughly 20,000 people. That's one bakery per 500 residents. For comparison, modern Manhattan has roughly one bakery per 3,000 people. Pompeii was bakery dense. Bread wasn't a luxury. It was the foundation of every meal, which means a baker's life wasn't isolated. They worked in a network, grain suppliers, landlords, customers, other bakers, competition, relationships, reputation. The bakery of Modestus had a counter facing the street, open to foot traffic. This wasn't a backroom operation. It was a public business. The real story of Pompeii's bakeries emerges when you stop seeing them as frozen moments and start seeing them as evidence of daily economic pressure. A baker woke before dawn, prepared dough with hired help or slaves, managed an oven that required constant attention, sold loaves at a price that had to cover grain, labor, rent, and profit. Repeat. Every day. On August 24th, 79 AD, when Vesuvius began to rumble, that Baker wasn't thinking about immortality or historical preservation. He was thinking about whether he'd sold enough loaves, whether his margins were holding, whether he'd have enough grain for tomorrow's batch, whether he was making money. The pyroclastic surge that killed Pompeii came in the late afternoon. Around 1 p.m., the first wave. By then, the baker's work was already finished. Loaves were cooling or sold. The shop was cleaning up, maybe closing early. Maybe the sky was already darkening. Maybe people were already nervous. What the bakeries of Pompeii actually show us is that the city wasn't frozen in routine. It was frozen in the middle of economic life. Bakers were competing, calculating, working long hours for uncertain profit, dependent on grain suppliers, vulnerable to market shifts, living under pressure that's remarkably familiar to anyone running a small business today. The snapshot narrative makes Pompeii safe. It happened once. It's over. We understand it. But the real Pompeii is more unsettling. It's a city of people solving daily problems, making decisions, living under constraints. People who woke up on August 24th, 79 AD, with the same anxieties and ambitions they had on August 23rd. The baker of Modestus didn't know that day would be his last. He didn't know the city would be buried for centuries and then excavated to tell his story. He knew he had loaves to bake, customers to serve, a living to make, that's all. The volcano made everything else irrelevant. What Pompeii's bakeries reveal is that ordinary life was never simple. It was complicated, economic, social, daily. And then it stopped. Not because the routine failed, because the ground beneath it did. The next time you read about Pompeii, skip past the snapshot. Look for the details, the competition, the pressure, the daily choices. That's where the real story lies. That's where the people are. Subscribe to uncover the economic lives and hidden pressures of people history forgot. The ones whose daily choices shaped civilizations.